everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Annovella and today is the 1st of November and that means the start of the monthly event World War November. This is a brand new event on BookTube and it is hosted by Tristan and the Classics, back from the history shelf, Bill Ruttenberg and Christy Lewis, and that's Dostoevsky in space. Now they are going to buddy read a book. There's also a Discord channel. I will put a link down below. And so yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff going on. Now, why am I also jumping on the wagon? Well, that's because this man. This is not my great-grandfather or my great-great-grandfather. This is my grandfather. So yeah. I named him Pepe. This is Emil Vertriest. He was an American soldier. So yeah, you can see that he is wearing an American uniform. And how is this possible that this is not my great-grandfather or great-great-grandfather, but my grandfather? Well, he had my father when he was almost 60 and my father had me when he was almost 40. So that's a lot of years in between. And yeah, and I'm no spring chicken either, but I'm not in my 70s or so. So no, I knew the man. I lived with him for 5 years. He died, well, he passed away when I was 5. And he was a born storyteller. He was really, really good at telling stories about his days in 1917 in the area, the Somme area, Verdun area. He fought in the trenches for a while, but mostly it was out of the trenches, so that was even more dangerous. Now, because of all his stories, and because he was very present in the household, because he was still shell-shocked, he was always afraid of getting diseases, and he was afraid of loud noises, and he was quite scared. So, and the problem was also that although he became a father at the age of almost 60, 59 and a bit, my grandmother passed away 2 years after birth because she was when she was 50, yeah. And so my father grew up alone with his dad, who was shell-shocked. So it had a huge impact on him too, and on us, because not only my grandfather was traumatized, but my father was traumatized of growing up in difficult circumstances with a shell-shocked grandfather. And he grew up during World War II, so can you imagine? And so my father is a nice man, but he has his issues, and yeah, and hence us too. But we are now in a world that we can deal with it, and we can go through therapy and work around it. So it ends with us, luckily. Now, World War I is something that was very, very alive in our household. There were a lot of stories, also World War II, so we heard stories all the time. So it was like almost we experienced it ourselves. Now, my grandmother on my mother's side, her family lived quite close to the trenches, so they constantly heard the bombardings and the bombings, and yeah, it was a constant sound, it was a constant noise that was in the background, and yeah, it was quite hard for them too. But not so hard as for my grandfather. Now, my grandfather has a lot of stories, so I will maybe during the month tell a couple of those stories that I heard. He won quite a few medals, and I will tell you how he got them. So now, because I've read so much about World War One, and I need to read a lot about World War One because there's constantly new material coming and or been published. And I made at least 3 sections. So I will do a section that is pure novelizations or first-hand accounts of the First World War. Then I will do a non-fiction video with non-fiction books that I liked or not liked. And I will do a video about the female experiences during World War One, because I did a whole lot of research on that for a movie that I've written, and that was never made. But still, I wrote it, and yeah, I did a whole lot of research for that. So there are a lot of things that I can tell around that. So I will make at least 3 videos about this event or for this event. So yeah, let's get started. Now, I made this video is novels, World War One novels. And yeah, of course, there are many sides to a war. So I made a couple of selections. The German view, the American view, the French view, the English view, the Belgian view, and then the female view, a couple. And so yeah, we have first one of the most mentioned books about World War One, or novels about World War One, is of course All Quiet on the Western Front by Remarque. This was a first-hand account of his experiences in the First World War as a German soldier. Then you also have A Storm of Steel by Ernst Jünger. I will read that one. I haven't read that before. And then there is also a very good book named The Radetzky March by Joseph Roth. I just recently read it. It really shows you the atmosphere just before the beginning of the war, and how they got drafted and everything. It's a wonderful book, very well written, and it is those last 2 books that I will mention, so The Radetzky March and The Salt of the Earth, are about 2 men that are going to the Eastern Front. So they were also fighting Russia up until 1917, and then there was the Russian Revolution. So that front line kind of dissolved. I'm not 100% sure because I don't know. Well, I don't know anything about that front, nor do I know enough of fronts like Gallipoli. That is something that is for me blank, absolutely blank. Now, the second one is Salt of the Earth by Jozef Wittlin. This is also a brilliantly written novel. The Salt of the Earth talks about a young man who is just a simple man. He doesn't know how to read and write, but he is passionate about trains. He is a porter on a train station, and for him, his life revolves around trains and rails and stations. And he is drafted, and everything that he tells is through his eyes, but with a special attention to everything trains. It is really well done. It is a remarkable view of how he doesn't see the broader picture. He just sees his trains and the world he knows, and he tries to keep it that small. It's a wonderful, wonderful novel by Jozef Wittlin. The Salt of the Earth. Now, the American view, there are, of course, quite a few famous novels, like Johnny's Got His Gun by Dalton Trumbo, which is the story of a soldier who lost his legs, his arm, actually his face too. They just keep him alive. And you hear the inner chatter of the man, and it is the ultimate anti-war novel you will ever read. It is really well done, and Dalton Trumbo was a magnificent screenwriter in Hollywood who then got ostracized and lost all his income because of McCarthy and his supposedly being a communist. Now, then I've also read A Farewell to Arms by Hemmingway. I was not impressed by this novel at all. I thought it was quite light. The story was quite thin, and his writing was also quite thin. I know he is a simple writer, but I prefer him in his short stories. There he is a master of short stories. Then I also thought of Force by Willa Cather. This is a book that I read a long time ago. I sort of liked it, but I didn't really believe it in a way. So that's the only three that I have from the American view, but I think that I'm pretty sure that there are better ones out there, and if you know them, please put them in the comments down below. So then, of course, there was also a French side, and I have two books that are from first account storytelling. We have Fear by Gabriel Chevalier, and we have Under Fire by Henri Barbusse. Those are two really well-respected novels, and I'm going to read them this month. And then two books that I've already read, At Night All Blood is Black by David Diop. That's the story of a Senegalese man who was brought from the colonies to the trenches as cannon fodder, and he turns mad. He completely loses his mind. It's a very confronting, hard novel. And then a brilliant novel, its French name is Au revoir là-haut. It is The Great Swindle by Pierrie Lemaitre. This is the story of two buddies, fighting buddies, or actually no, they are saved together during an attack on Hill 117, I believe, and I think it was in Flanders Fields. And one has lost his face almost completely, and the other one has a severe leg wound. And this is set during the last couple of months of the First World War. They stay together. They try to rebuild their lives together, but they are so messed up because of everything that they've seen and went through. And they decide to change their names to take the identity of other soldiers that passed away, and they started to rebuild their life, but it's horrible. And Pierrie Lemaitre used the mess Europe was, or France and Belgium was, after the World War, because they ended fighting at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1818, and they all left their arms and everything, and the mess had to be cleaned up. So there was a lot of companies that made a lot of money with everything that was left behind. Also the bodies, they made a lot of money burying the bodies, and there was a lot of swindling going on, and this is what the book is about. It's a brilliant book. I just finished it and I loved it. The Great Swindle by Pierrie Lemaitre. Now, the English view, I have A Journey's End. This is actually a play, A Journey's End by R.C. Sherriff. Beautifully done, and if you want to read it, because it's so short, there's a video on YouTube where it's just the audio of this, the play, the audio of the play, and you can follow it, and it becomes really alive, a lot more than when you read it like this. So it's beautiful. It's really well done. It's about a young man named Raleigh, and he looks up to Stanhope, or since before the war, Stanhope is a really good sportsman, and they are in the same school, and Stanhope is already a couple of years in the trenches, and Raleigh, once he's old enough to go to the trenches, makes sure that he will end up in the same company as Stanhope, and it's really beautiful. And then Goodbye to All That by Robert Graves. This is a first hand account. Robert Graves was a poet, and he was really traumatized by his experiences in the trenches as a British soldier, and he vowed after that he would never go back to the UK, and this is his story. This is his story of the reasons why, and what he all went through, and he was highly, highly traumatized by it. Then there's A Long, Long Way by Sebastian Barry. I have not read it yet, but I love Sebastian Barry, so I will definitely read it this November or maybe next November. There's also Regeneration by Pat Barker. This is it's a trilogy, and apparently it's absolutely wonderful. I have not read it, but I will this month. And then there's also In Memoriam, one of the latest novels that came out about World War I by Alice Winn. In Memoriam it tells a similar story to Journey's End, but here the boys they are more the same age, and they fall in love. And that's also a really good book. And then we have the Belgian view. Now there are many books about the First World War written in Belgium, but they didn't get translated. There are only 2 that I found. War and Turpentine by Stefan Hertmans. I really enjoyed this novel, but I'm told that the tone of voice is not exactly correct in English. It's a bit too cocky. But if you get past that, this is a beautiful novel. It are the diaries of Stefan Hertmans' father, who also went through the First World War, or grandfather, and his grandfather was a painter and an ex-soldier of the trenches, and he was given by when he died all the notes of his grandfather, and he decided to make a book out of it. So War and Turpentine by Stefan Hertmans. And then there's also While the Gods Were Sleeping by Erwin Mortier. This is the story told of an old lady who experienced some gruesome stuff during the First World War. It was difficult for the Belgians then. The Germans were really angry at us because they thought the Belgian government would do nothing and just let them pass through to go to Paris. We didn't, and we have felt it. Cities like Leuven were completely destroyed because of tir franc. What does that mean? Well, when the German soldiers arrived, they were not very well trained. It wasn't like the Second World War, nothing of the sort. They were often drunk, and when they when they took Leuven, the university city close to Brussels, only 20 kilometers from Brussels, they were drinking all day, all night, and there was a fire shot, and they thought that it was somebody from Leuven, somebody of the inhabitants that shot on the German soldiers, which was actually not true. It was just one of their soldiers who was out of his mind, too much schnapps, and they burned and bombarded the whole of Leuven down. So it was horrific. Now there's also a female view, and I thought of Lies Told in Silence by M.K. Todd. about a couple of women who had to survive close to the trenches. And then one of the women, of course, falls in love with a soldier. And yeah. Then there's also the Alice Network, which is about the espionage during World War I, which was mostly done by women. And I will do a separate video about that. So the women in World War I. And there's also Grey Souls by Philippe Claudel. This is set in 1816 or 1817, and there's a murder just behind the trenches in France, and on a woman, and so they try to discover who the murderer is. Is it one of the soldiers that lost his mind, or somebody else? So yeah, that's also a very good novel. That's it. That is my list for just novels. If you have any other suggestions for me, I'm sorry. If you have any other suggestions for me, please put them down below in the comments. Thank you for watching. I hope you liked this one. I know it's a bit boring for you, maybe, if you are not into war novels, but I am. I'm sorry. That's just his fault. Emile. I loved him. I really loved him. Thank you for watching and hope to see you soon. Bye bye.